Hey everybody, this is Josh for another episode of the Solopreneur Grind Podcast. Very happy to be joined by Jacky from AnswerHQ. Jacky, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hey everyone, thank you Josh for the introduction, and hello everyone, my name is Jacky. I'm the founder of AnswerHQ. AnswerHQ is an AI customer service assistant that helps small businesses and early stage startups reduce their customer support questions by around 80%. And started this in September, also working full-time as a developer advocate at Timescale. So this is a side hustle that turned into a full-time hustle from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. and weekends. And it's been such a great journey so far building this, and getting to chat with folks like, Josh, and sharing the story has been super fun. So excited to get into this.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm as well for a couple reasons. Number one, I was checking out your website before the show, and for my legal tech startup, customer support takes a lot of manual time. So we're definitely going to kind of talk about your product and how it works and benefits and stuff like that. And maybe we'll have to talk about that off air as well. And then secondly, a lot of the guests I have on the show are full-time solopreneurs doing whatever it is they might be. And in your case, it's a super interesting situation where you have a full-time job, you have AnswerHQ on the side. Can you talk a little bit about how that first kind of got started?
Yeah. So, with a lot of solopreneurs I talk to, some of them start their businesses out of kind of a bad situation. So for me, it was kind of similar. I was working as a developer advocate. So what a developer advocate is, it's a blend of a software developer that can also talk to other people. This can include things like talking to other developers, talking to salespeople, marketing people. And that's kind of my job. It's like marketing, but for developers. So my day job is a developer advocate. And I worked for this AI company called Pinecone last year that worked for about 4 months, and then I got laid off. And so, during this time, obviously pretty sad, just pretty disappointed, really enjoyed the job. But I decided to kind of funnel some of that energy towards building something on the side. So this was, during the time I was looking for jobs. So on top of looking for jobs full time, I was also building AnswerHQ full time. And the idea came from a pretty silly idea, which is, I often go to recipe websites, or I go to restaurant websites, and I'm trying to find some basic information like, hey, what time are you guys open? How can I make a reservation? Or maybe if I want baking cookies, like what is the recipe? But I have to kind of go through, the person's life story, which, hey, great that you have a great life story, but I kind of just want the recipe. I just wanted the time. And I was like, why don't we have these things on these websites that I can just ask and answer these basic questions? And that was kind of where the idea came from. Initially I was trying to target restaurants, but turns out trying to target restaurants is a pretty tough thing to do because it's a pretty low margin business. So I actually pivoted to focusing on, a broader area of small businesses and early stage startups. But back to the question, juggling between full-time job, which is a pretty demanding, 9-to-5 full-time job, on top of building a business, just a lot of methodical time management and a lot of heart, because building a business isn't all sunshine and rainbows at all time that some people on social media might tell you, right? So it requires a lot of grit, a lot of heart, a lot of real love towards your business. And for me, building stuff like this, sharing it with folks like you is a real passion of mine. So yeah, just time management and lots of passion.
Awesome. And walk us through maybe the first few months. So you decide, you find this problem, you're like, why isn't there a tool that does this? What kind of happens next? Do you start coding something right away? Did you try to validate it? And then walk us through maybe getting those first few users or first few customers.
Yeah, so 2 questions here. One is, how did I validate the idea and decide to kind of commit my time? And the second is customer acquisition, at least in the early stage. So kind of to answer your first question first, I was formerly a product manager, and part of a product manager's job is to validate ideas, gauge the market, and understand customer pain, right? So those 3 things. Worked with a head of PM at a previous company I worked for who I learned a lot from, and he kind of drilled that into me. I kind of just skipped through all of that. So I'm sorry, Rick. I'm sorry, Rick.
I
kind of skipped through. Yeah, he might watch this, whatever. I'm sorry, Rick. Kind of ignored everything there. But what I did was but one thing I do believe in is I worked for about 2-3 weeks on a MVP, minimal viable product. And it was super simple. It basically just condensed the idea of AnswerHQ to its core, which is just a little chat widget that sits on a person's website. And everything else I did manually, things like importing websites, creating an account. I did that for my customers. And one of my friends, Ren, he has an e-commerce business. And I was telling him about the idea that I had, and he was like, dude, that's sick. I would use this. Try it. So I built the MVP in about 2 to 3 weeks, used AI tools, obviously, which has massively increased my product velocity. I can basically do the job of like 4 people with AI coding tools and whatnot. And he installed it on his website. He started using it. He gets a ton of repetitive questions because of the nature of his product. Things like shipping costs, things like which item should I buy? He loved it. In a week, he paid me for a full year of subscription, which at the time, it was about $6 a month for the SaaS product. And so 1 year was $72, which is, I don't offer that price anymore, but I locked it in for Ren. Yeah, locked it in for Ren. He's my customer for life. Yeah, and that little validation right there was what I really saw as, wow, I can continue working on this because I actually have one paying customer. Because I think for a lot of SaaSes, especially for SaaSes like mine, getting your first 1 to 2 to 5 customers is often the hardest part. And, things get a little easier and easier as you get, customer testimonials, case studies made. So that initial validation from Ren was really what gave me the idea to just keep working on this. And then one thing led to another. I started posting on Reddit. I started building in public, which is a concept of building your startup in public and sharing your progress on like LinkedIn, on X, on Threads, etc. And yeah, started just gaining a few more customers. I started building case studies with them to share with other folks that are maybe on the fence about AI tools, talked a lot about ROI. And yeah, it's been great. And I process about 100,000 questions a month now across all my customers, hit a revenue goal that I set for myself, monthly revenue goal for myself. I hit that in January as opposed to the end of this year, so I arrived at it 12 months early. So yeah, to wrap it up, early product development, ignored a lot of the product stuff that I learned. I developed a MVP, let it out in public, let my users test it. They gave me lots of great feedback, both good and not so good. Most honestly, in the beginning, it was mostly not so good, but it helped me shape my product. And then, yeah, started getting some users. They helped me build case studies, testimonials. And, since then, it's just been really awesome.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. I think maybe the thing that sticks to me the most is that you got the MVP out quick, right? Because yes, sometimes there's like a market pulling you to build a business. In this case, I would say it was a little bit more of a scratch your own itch, which is great. We hear about that a lot. But
Yeah.
then you didn't go into your room and spend 8 months building an MVP, right? Like
Yeah.
you said, you leveraged AI, you got a basic product out in 2 to 3 weeks, you got it in
Yep.
people's hands, and you kind of evolved it from there. So I love
Yeah.
that. Can you
It's
talk?
super important. It's super important to be quick in today's age. Like I work in this AI industry and I'm seeing these companies, these, YC startups. There was a statistic that I saw from Gary Tan, who heads up YC. He's saying that something like 80% to 90% of every the current YC batches company, their code is written by AI. And I'm not a believer that AI is going to replace humans, at least not yet. But I'm a massive believer that if you're a human that's smart and you can leverage AI to boost your productivity, not only in coding, but in marketing, sales, copywriting, blogging. I'm a big believer of that. And I would say that I'm a case study here in that it has massively boosted my productivity and allows me to, work after work and on weekends to be a one-person startup.
Absolutely. And I was just going to ask, so this is a good segue. What are maybe 2 or 3 tools that you might recommend, maybe for coders, maybe like 1 or 2 for people who do code and 1 or 2 for people who don't?
Oh yeah, let's start with the people that don't code. This software that we're using right now, Descript, Squadcast by Descript, it's actually one of my favorite, not Squadcast specifically, but Descript itself is one of my favorite AI tools. It's used for video editing. Basically what it does is you can import a fully recorded video and then it generates a transcript using AI, cleans it up. You can click a button and it cleans up all your silences, your ums. Sometimes we use ums a lot, right? So it does that automatically for you. And it saves me a ton of time as someone that's not a professional video editor. So Descript is 1 for non-technical people. 2, any tool out there right now like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, try it out. I think there's a lot of news out there which are both sides of the extreme, right? One is AI is going to replace every single person. I don't believe in that. And then the other side is AI is crap, right? AI, it just hallucinates. I also don't really believe in that. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, maybe trending more towards AI is really good. And, you don't really know what they're capable of or not capable of until you try it yourself. And I'm a big believer of just trying it out. Trying new things is always a good thing. So yeah, ChatGPT, Claude, and Descript is two of my favorite tools for non-technical people. For technical folks, I still recommend ChatGPT, Claude, etc. Claude is my favorite model for coding right now, although Gemini is getting really up there too. Good job, Google. They've been behind for a few years, but they've really hit their stride recently. And Cursor is the tool I use to actually code. Great tool, great team, very receptive to feedback. And it's been the primary driver of the AnswerHQ product itself. And I've been also experimenting with, OpenAI's new Codex, which is their new agentic tool, and also been trying out Cursor Claude Code as well, which is Claude's own agentic coding tool. Lots of new tools out there. It's really easy to get lost. So I would say just focus on a few and then getting really good at them instead of trying to spread yourself thin and trying out everything, because it's impossible to keep up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially it'll be the humans and the AI existing in harmony that will probably be the best output.
Yeah.
As you kind of alluded to, I use Descript. I love it. I don't have a design bone in my body, and it allows me to post this podcast so quickly and easily. You can also record natively in Descript and then edit it as well. So it definitely gets my 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Jacky, what about you? So you have a job, you're a solopreneur on the side. As you kind of mentioned, it's your 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. You mentioned some tools that you use. Do you have any other pieces of advice or strategies to just operate more efficiently as a solopreneur with the side hustle?
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of stuff that is both operational and non-operational for me that makes this work. First of all, I have a exceptionally supportive spouse, my wife, who is really patient about me, maybe working a little more than I would like or she would like, because we don't spend as much time together, certain days. But she offers me the flexibility to build our future, basically, because, I'm honestly, as much as I love building stuff, I'm also building AnswerHQ for us, right? It's for our future. So I gotta thank Christine for being supportive, not just on an emotional level, but sometimes helping me with maybe other things in life that takes my time. So that's one thing. Second part is just being extremely methodical about your use of time. Us humans, we only have 24 hours a day, and then a third of that is going to sleep. So for me, just being extremely aware of every single hour, it's literally like down to the hour for me. Like I have this little timer that I set where I use this Pomodoro technique, which, allocates time every 45 minutes to work. And I take a 5-minute break so that I don't, get a sore back. So being extremely methodical. I use a notebook to write down every single task that I have to do. I prefer notebooks because it feels more real when I write things down as opposed to using a online tool. And it also helps with my eyes too. I get really dry eyes if I use my computer too much. So having a notebook to write down everything has been exceptionally helpful. Another thing that I enjoy using is actually more AI tools. So I have this little physical necklace thing that records my conversations and summarizes it for me. So if I go to a meeting, I can just, click a button and enables this AI pendant, which records my conversations and summarizes it for me. That has been very helpful for saving my time. And yeah, I think in the end, it just still goes back to time management and just being extremely, extremely methodical with every single hour that you use and cutting out distractions. However, there are some things that are non-negotiable for me. I need to make sure that I have at least 8 hours of sleep, because if I don't sleep well, my productivity is going to, go down. I'm going to be cranky, etc. And I also make sure that I exercise 4 days a week. I do rock climbing, and that is my non-negotiable time, because that's pretty much the only time I get that is completely myself. But I also make sure that, my mind is sharper from rock climbing and my body is not atrophying because I'm 32 and my body's already dying from sitting all day. But yeah, just being extremely methodical with your time, making sure that you're resting well, making sure that you're eating well, making sure that you're exercising, make sure you're moving, and just And having a supportive spouse also really is helpful here as well. So yeah, I would say it's pretty generic advice, nothing, unique here. I don't do cold plunges. I don't, wake up at 4 a.m., drink, that like water and dunk my face. I don't do any of that.
None of the ice face plunges that
No,
we're seeing all over TikTok right now.
no, none of
No,
that.
that's great stuff. Jacky, what would you say has been the hardest part of your journey as a solopreneur so far?
That's a really good question. So for me, I'm a technical person. So building product and kind of making product decisions is definitely the easy part, especially with AI. The hardest part has definitely been go to market. I'm not a marketing or salesperson by trade. My past 10 years in Silicon Valley have just been, development and technical stuff. So for me, go to market has been the toughest, especially marketing. And, when I first started AnswerHQ, 99% of my time was focused on building, right? Building as in, coding and making product decisions, talking to customers. Those things come naturally for me. The past 2 months, my time has shifted from 90% product to about 90% marketing and sales and maybe 10% product. And as a single founder, your time is your startup, right? So it has slowed down product development, but I've been setting up like cold outbound pipelines that send emails to folks that I think is my ICP. That has been a learning experience. Building case studies from scratch with my customers. That's been a learning experience. Learned that all, by just experimentation. Posting on, there's a website called G2, which is a review site for popular enterprise and small business SaaS products, which is trustworthy. Gotten my customers to post on there. That's been a learning experience. Basically learning from scratch, from trial and error, how to do marketing and sales for early stage startups like mine. That's been the biggest challenge. And to me, I feel like a mice that's in the dark in a maze trying to figure out where the cheese is just by spelling it. I kind of know where it is, but I have no idea what the direction is. So it's been just experimentation. Yeah. So that's been toughest.
Sure. And it goes hand in hand with what we were talking about earlier, which is those people who just go off and spend 8 months building, and then they come out of their cave, and then they're like, oh my God, okay, now I have a product.
Exactly.
Nobody knows about it.
Exactly.
And that's really when the fun, quote unquote, fun starts.
Yeah.
So,
to build on your point, not only do they not know about it, but you don't even know if people need it. And if people don't need it, then no amount of marketing is going to help with that. Like marketing and sales can definitely help with a lot of holes in your product, because oftentimes if your marketing is good enough, people are still going to try it, still going to use it, still going to give you some money. But if no one knows about your product and it's not a product that people need, then you're starting in a very tough spot.
For sure. I always think back to, there's this story from, I think it's about Gary Halbert, who was like a legendary copywriter.
Yeah.
And he was doing a seminar and basically asking, hey, I'm going to give you this, it was like a hot dog stand or something. And you can pick one, adjective, or I forget what it was, characteristic about your audience.
Yeah.
And people are yelling out and this and that, and nobody can get it. And he says, what I want is a starving audience, right? Like people who have a deep, deep need for whatever it is you want. Yeah. So kind of going hand in hand with that.
Yeah,
so Jacky,
definitely.
This is one of my favorite questions that I typically ask, which is, let's say there's somebody out there right now and they're meaning to start a business, or they really want to start a business, maybe something like yours.
Yeah.
Can you give them a 5-step process that they could start working on today or tomorrow to get theirs off the ground?
You got some really good questions. So 5-step process. I would say before anyone starting a company, be very clear what you want out of building a business. For a lot of people, it is simply just the glory of saying you're a CEO, you're a founder. That is not a good reason to start a business, because a lot of what you read on social media is just a highlight of a business. You might go on TikTok and go on X and whatever and see people, flexing their cash, showing their revenue graph. But what you don't see is weeks of not acquiring a new customer, and you're trying new things and it still isn't working. No one really shows any of that. And I'm very clear in my building in public when things aren't working out, because I think part of building a business is just being persistent. So I would say before even the 5-step process, be very clear what you want out of your business, because you're in this for the long haul.
Okay. Maybe that's a good step one, like determine what your reason is and whether it's good enough.
Exactly. And the second part is understanding, this is not even a step by step. This is more of like qualifying questions of yourself. Do you mind if I just do it that way?
No, by
I
all
don't like to
means.
give, I don't like to give templated advice. I would say the second part is, where are you getting funding from? Are you funding your business from your own pocket? Are you getting investors? Is it from friends and family who don't want anything out of your business and just want to trust you? Because, running a business, you do need capital. And I'm sure your audience is not just software, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so people are building businesses. Maybe they're doing coin laundry. Some people might be doing landscaping. You do need starting capital. And most of the capital is either going to come from your own pocket, from investors, from your friends, from your family. You have to kind of be very clear what that is. And oftentimes, as you're running a business, you might run out of money. What are you going to do afterwards? So being very clear where your starting capital is. For AnswerHQ, I'm fully bootstrapped. I'm funding it with my own savings and with my own money. So I'm not really pressured by external capital or investors, and I'm going to try to stay that way as long as possible. So yeah, second point, be very clear where your money is. The third point is, don't think of an idea. Think of pain points instead. I'm on Reddit a lot on some of these business subreddits, like small business, SaaS, entrepreneur. And I see one of the most common questions I see is, what is a good business idea? Or how can I make money? I think people are making the wrong question here, or asking the wrong question here, because people don't buy ideas because ideas are cheap. People buy pain points. And there's this quote from Silicon Valley, which is like, build painkillers, not vitamins. Build for people's pain, which is exactly like your story of the hot dog stand. They want hungry people. They want starving people, as horrible as that sounds. When people are really needing a solution, that's when they will pay for it. That's when they will try it. So make sure that you understand what the customer pain you're trying to solve for, and then building the product around that. 4, build that MVP. Don't spend, well, first of all, depending on your product, you might have to spend 6, 12, even 24 months building it. For things like hard tech, like if you're building a rocket ship, you can't build an MVP in 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe you can. Maybe, you're really smart. Maybe you can. But most people probably aren't that. But for things like software, it really is the time to launch for a software product is just going down and down and down. It used to take 6 months to build an MVP because you're relying on humans or you're contracting out a team. Now it can take 6 weeks, 6 days even, and you can have an MVP out. Put your idea to the core essence of what it is, release it out there, get feedback, build in public, share your learnings, and just constantly learn from your initial launch. And then you can, have a splashy launch on Product Hunt once you validate the idea and there's customers, but always start small, start validating, don't build in the dark. And then when you release it, realize either no one cares about your product, no one needs your product, or those 2 things. And then the 5th part is take care of yourself. Make sure you're hydrating, make sure you're stretching. I need to remind myself that. Make sure you're eating healthy, make sure you're exercising, sleeping well. What's funny is these 5 points don't really relate that much to like building an actual business, but it's about like, making sure that you're thinking properly and making sure that you are physically good. And I think that's how you build a long-term business, making sure that you're healthy and just, making sure you're addressing the pain points of people that you're building for.
Yeah, and I think that's been more of a recent shift, which is up till like maybe 5-10 years ago, it was grind, work 20 hours a day, blah, blah, blah. And now maybe with science and, more education and stuff, people are like, no, get the 8 hours a day so that the other 16 are better and exercise and stuff like that. So
well, stuff like that does let you like work longer, right? Like exercising, sleeping well, lets you work longer at a higher quality at a longer interval. I definitely work like 12 hours a day. I definitely do that. But at least with exercise and good sleep, I can, stay good at a longer pace, and it keeps me running this marathon instead of it being this like 100-meter sprint. So.
And also everyone's different, right? I mean, I've thought about that kind of equation a lot of like, okay, well, I'm optimal at 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
But what happens when you have all these extra things you also have to do? At what point should you shave an hour off of sleep? At what point should you shave an hour off of, extracurriculars, et cetera. But everybody's different. You got to find your own mix. And so, I really like that advice. The other thing that I usually add, you had a great point about building MVPs quickly, is a lot of people, I find especially non-coders, think that they have to go build a complex coded MVP.
Absolutely.
I've had this conversation so many times where, for example, a colleague wanted to build like an AI-backed talent marketplace.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, do you really want to go spend all that money to build the MVP? Or
Yep.
can you stick a form that connects to
Absolutely.
Airtable
Yep.
just to try and see if you can get anybody to use it to begin with? So,
Yeah.
how can you use no-code tools as an MVP or even like version 0.5 before bringing the coders in or stuff like that?
I literally had this conversation with someone 2 weeks ago who is a current student, and he's building a two-way marketplace for students to find, good neighborhoods to move into when they're going to school. And he asked me, what tools should I use for building this MVP? What language should I use? And I told him, dude, just build a form, connect that form to Airtable, to Google Spreadsheets, and then share that form with the, property developers, because to them, they're not looking for a product. They just want the qualified leads of students, right? And students just want the qualified leads of an apartment building in a good neighborhood. You don't need a complex product for that. A form works perfectly fine.
Yeah. You could probably validate like 90% plus of businesses with a form, at least to start. Basic landing page with a form in the back end. But anyways, we're preaching to the choir here. Awesome, Jacky. The last or second last thing I wanted to ask is, you've mentioned building in public a few times.
Yeah.
For those who are interested, maybe they don't know much about what it is. Can you share a few tips of like how you've been doing it and what's worked well for you in that regard?
Yeah. So to kind of give an elevator pitch about what building in public is, in Silicon Valley, there's just been this concept of being in stealth, like building in stealth. Basically, what that means is you spend 6, 12, 24 months building in literally stealth. You don't talk about it. You don't share it. You maybe tell just a few investors and a few friends, and then you have a splashy launch. You hire a PR firm, you hire an advertising agency, you hire a marketing firm, do a super splashy launch, have great videos, post on Product Hunt. And that's been kind of how things have been for a long time. And for a long time that has worked. However, most recently, there's been this, I wouldn't say recently, but like the past few years, there's been this trend of building in public, which is the complete opposite of building in stealth. Building in public means you talk about literally the whole process. During the process or after the process, doing retroactives, you're building in public by posting on X, on Threads, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, even on YouTube, about what you're building for your current product, how you're making decisions, how you validated your idea, how you figured out pain points, how you talk to your customers, what tools you're using, how you're building it. Basically, you talk about everything, complete opposite of building in stealth. What this does is that you're building an early distribution platform for your product, both for the curious-minded of people that are interested in following people that are building, but second of all, you're also possibly getting early customers for people to try it. So that's what building in public is, which is you're just sharing literally everything about your building. And what's unique about building in public is that it offers a really transparent and realistic view of the process of building. So you're sharing not just the good stuff, but also the not so good stuff. And that's very authentic for a lot of people because you're showing a side of you that maybe you won't share or no one really shares. So people love that like personal connection they feel with building publickers. And that's what I do. So I go on Threads, I'm on X, I'm on LinkedIn, and sometimes even on the TikTok, and I share the entire process. I share everything, the good, the bad. And yeah, it builds a small little audience. One thing that I think some build in public people may not mention is that oftentimes the people that follow build in public founders often aren't the ICP that you're targeting. So, what that means is just because you're sharing this stuff in public doesn't mean that those reading it are going to be the buyers of your product. So one thing to be careful of, which is, are you sure that your building in public is conducive of your marketing and sales? Because sometimes you're just talking to an audience that's never going to buy. So something to keep in mind of.
Awesome. And can you just expand on when you say I'm sharing everything on these platforms? Are you doing a weekly vlog? Are you going live? Like, what's the actual tactics or that you're employing?
So there are definitely folks that go live and, code their startup, live in person, or they make videos and post on YouTube. I'm not that involved because that would take too much of my time. What I do is I simply just, let's say I'm building a new feature. I would share that I talked to this customer A, B, and C. They have this pain point. So I'm going to build this feature and I'm going to build it using this technology. I'm going to distribute it in this way. And then I would just literally just live tweet my process. And then people would they would comment on it. They might even retweet it or share it with their friends. That's kind of my process. But I think for everyone, it's different. Some people that really kickstarted this idea of building public and have had really good success with it is Peter Levels. There's also folks like Mark Lovin. Those are I think the two really big ones in terms of building public. And these guys are generating million MRR businesses. So they are the top of the top of the top. And that's what they do. They just share everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Very, very helpful. My last question, Jacky, to everybody is, let's say there's someone out there, maybe in your case, they're working full time. They have an idea. They're thinking about starting a business. What would be your kind of last piece of advice or message you'd want to leave with them?
Yeah, I would say definitely think of the pain point. Don't think of the business idea. Don't try to think that you're trying to strike it rich because I think that's the wrong thought process, but think in the pain that you're solving. I think this applies to non-technical folks. It applies to technical founders, which is just build for pain, because when people are feeling the pain of their existing product or the lack of a product, they're going to be more willing to try your product and use it. So think about what pain people are feeling with either current products or non-existent products, and then build for that and keep iterating and keep talking to those folks.
Great advice. Great note to end on, Jacky. Once again, it was great having you on the show. If people want to learn more about you or your company, where do you recommend that they go?
Yeah, so I'm on quite a few places. You can find AnswerHQ, which is a customer assistant platform that automates a lot of repetitive questions by 80%. You can try this at answerhq.co. That's answerhq.co. And then I'm also on all the socials. I'm on LinkedIn, X, and Threads, and it is just Jacky Liang. And there will be a link in the description to follow me. I also write on Substack, which is answerhq.substack.com. This is where I talk more about how AI is changing work and how people are using AI, because that's something that's very fascinating to me, just real world use cases of AI. But other than that, you can also just email me. I'm available pretty much always, other than when I'm sleeping. So
great. And we'll have links to all those in the description, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform. Jacky, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.